Two people work the same job, face similar pressures, and use a substance in similar amounts. Yet one develops dependency while the other doesn't. This divergence is rarely the result of a single factor. Instead, researchers look at four specific domains: genetics, trauma, environment, and chronic stress. These are balanced against protective factors, the biological and social buffers that can reduce the impact of those risks. Dependency develops where these variables intersect, with each factor shifting the probability of the final outcome. Research shows that genetics account for 40 to 60% of a person's overall risk for developing a substance use disorder. When comparing groups, people with a parent who has a substance use disorder face 4 to 8 times the risk. This heritability figure is often misunderstood. It describes the influence of DNA across a population. It does not give an individual a flat 50% chance of becoming dependent. Instead, these genetic variants dictate how strongly the brain's reward pathway responds to a substance, and how quickly the body builds a tolerance to it. Genetics establish the starting point. They load the dice, but they do not determine how they finally land. Beyond biology, the connection between early trauma and later substance use is among the most documented findings in the field, primarily through the Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACE, study. The data follows a clear trajectory. People experiencing 4 or more adverse childhood experiences face up to 12 times the risk of developing substance problems. In treatment settings, this overlap is pronounced. 85 to 100% report early trauma. Early trauma measurably affects the development of the brain regions responsible for self-control and impulse regulation, including the prefrontal cortex. This often leads to the self-medication pathway, where substances are used to manage the anxiety and emotional pain that unresolved trauma leaves behind. When these self-regulation centers are compromised by early stress, the brain is more likely to rely on chemical coping mechanisms to maintain stability. Environmental risk involves immediate external factors, such as easy access to substances, peer influences, and family stability. In the workplace, long-haul trucking has been formally classified as one of the highest risk occupations for mental health and substance use. This chart shows the disparity. Truck drivers report depression symptoms at nearly double the national average, ranking 5th among occupations for suicide risk. These conditions correlate with high self-medication rates. Studies found alcohol use at 91% and amphetamines over 82%. The specific drivers for these figures include chronic sleep deprivation, irregular schedules, extreme social isolation, and constant time pressure. These factors compound. A person with a moderate genetic predisposition who faces both early trauma and severe occupational stress experiences a much higher level of total risk than someone facing only one. Occupational stress acts as a persistent catalyst, testing an individual's underlying vulnerabilities over years of repeated exposure. Protective factors serve as the counterforce in this research. They can directly lower the likelihood of dependency or reduce the impact of risk factors that are already present. Documented buffers include stable relationships, clear accountability in the workplace, and consistent mental health support. This resilience also has a measurable biological component, studied through the lens of epigenetics. Some individuals show biological differences in how their stress response systems function. This biological buffering helps maintain stability even when significant risk factors are present. Resilience functions as a biological and social defense system that can be supported and strengthened through treatment and consistent social connection. When we apply this framework to Marcus, we see a stable childhood and no clear indicators of high genetic risk. His vulnerability was almost entirely occupational. 11 years of long-haul routes and chronic sleep deprivation created the conditions for tolerance and dependency to develop. Marcus was also missing a protective layer. He managed these pressures in isolation, without the support networks or mental health access that might have altered his trajectory. His situation illustrates how sustained occupational pressure, when left unmanaged by external support, follows the predictable biological patterns of the brain. Understanding the architecture of addiction clarifies why dependency develops. Providing structural support and treatment access changes how occupational risks ultimately play out.